We do?
Yes. All right, so you want to open up Maya, and we're going to walk through the start of this bouncing ball just so you get a feel for how to animate this thing, okay? So I'm going to walk you through just doing a basic bouncing ball. I want you to play with it. I want you to understand the basics of it. And then you can start to do the actual assignment of it. So just like the stick one, we're doing a practice one, and then we're doing the for real one, okay? This is the practice one. So I'll wait till everyone has Maya open.
Yes.
That's a good question. In this case, we can use a polygon or a NURB sphere. They're both spheres. I prefer using a NURB sphere for one reason, and that is this. When I'm in my side view like this, and I go into wireframe, I don't have a bunch of lines there. If I create a polygon sphere, you can see that I have a bunch of lines there. So here I have a lot more stuff going on, so it might be a little bit slower working. Not crazy slow, but a little bit slower.
So should we save this document then?
You can. So I like to use the NURBs instead, okay? Now I'm going to run through just some quick things that, not on this assignment, but some things that we could do to this just to kind of rig it, all right? So we're starting off with a basic sphere. I'm using a NURB sphere. I'm going to just show a couple things. So under the animation menu, under Create Deformers, there are these nonlinear deformers, okay? And what these allow you to do is just manipulate the object. So one thing I can do is this squash, okay? The squash has this little handle that allows me to go here to factor, and I can literally squash it. And you can see this is the kind of effect that we would want to be happening, where I'm not really losing any volume here. It's just changing the shape of it, okay? This is much different than, let me delete that, than just doing this, okay? That's not squashing. That doesn't give me the appearance of anything squashing. It's like shrinking, okay? Where with this, I get the feeling that this thing is actually squashing, that there's some sort of presence there that's kind of wiggling it around. And then the other one that's in here is bend. And on bend, this one allows me to kind of bend the shape of this, okay? And I can control this. Let me put this down by the bottom. It does a better job. There we go. So I can control this thing kind of bending and flopping and doing whatever. Depending on the kind of animation you're doing for a ball bounce, you could have it rigged up and do different things. In this one, these things don't really apply to us because of how we're animating it and how we're rigging it. We don't really need these, okay? But if I had a ball that I wanted to have it stretch out and get kind of like floppy or bend over to one side, I would definitely want to use the bend deformer on this, okay? There's also these other ones like flare. And if I go here, you can see I can kind of squash this out. These are also great tools for modeling. If you had the intro class when we taught the toy room, there's a balloon right there in like 2 seconds. There's also, oops, let me go to a different one. I'm going to create a polygon plane just so you can see this one. There's a sine wave. I just have to rotate it downward like that, and change my amplitude. And now I can take this and make this thing kind of wavy. Okay, so if I wanted a really quick like hacky flag without doing any dynamics or anything, there we go. And I can also rotate it, on an angle so I get different looks to it. Fancy. All right. There's a regular wave, which goes from the center out. Add a little bit of amplitude.
Simple ways we can do to the ball?
No, these are just different deformers that you can play with. They don't really apply to this assignment, except to understand that you can use these for certain kinds of rigging features. And there's twist. Oops, I already did wave. And a lot of these you just have to pick the direction. Make sure it's going the right direction. And then we can do stuff like twisting, like that. Okay? So there's lots of different ways you can kind of rig this thing if you were to rig it or inclined to rig it. But for this, we're just using this simple sphere, and we're going to do everything manually. Okay? So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our sphere is sitting on the ground plane. Just like our other objects, everything we animate, we use the ground as our floor. So if you hold down J and you just click the arrow key up, you'll see how it snaps right to
Wait, J
that.
in the move tool, right?
Yeah, be in the move tool and hold J, and then drag the Y arrow up, the green arrow up.
What
And
does
you'll,
holding the J do?
it snaps it. So instead of us having to move it and kind of eyeball it, we just hold J and it snaps it right there so it's lined up.
Awesome.
Okay. Now we also have, as we hit J, in our channel box, you see that our translate Y is set to 1. I don't want my translate Y set to 1. I want my translate Y set to 0 because that's where I want to start my animation.
Okay, so
Okay.
press enter.
Nope, so we're going to go to modify and freeze the transforms.
Wait, edit. Oh, edit.
Modify. Okay, so modify, freeze transforms.
Free transform tools?
Yeah.
So,
Freeze transform.
Freeze transform, yes.
okay.
Okay, now what that does is it takes our translate 1 that we had up there and it zeroes it out and keeps the ball exactly where it was. Okay, we have to be careful when using this because, like, let's say my sphere is like this. Okay, and then I freeze my transforms. Well, now you can see that I can't rotate the sphere in the correct direction anymore. I can't even scale it, you know, in the direction I'd want to scale it. Now it's like at this weird angle. So you just have to be careful when you freeze transform just to make sure that it's facing the direction you want it to face. Okay? All right, so let's give ourselves a little bit of time down here. So instead of 24 frames, let's go with 60 frames. Okay, so we're just going right in here in this box and typing in 60. Okay, now we're going to break it down just like we did the stick. And instead of us doing one stick at a time, we're going to do one attribute at a time. Okay, except for the scales, we'll do all the scales together. So the first one we want to do is translate Y, because that's the most exciting one. All right, so let's go to translate Y and set a key on it.
So, can we just press key selected?
Yep.
Okay. Now what?
Okay, so then we're going to go up to, let's say, 20. And we'll set another key on translate Y exactly where it's at.
Okay, so 20.
Yep. And then we'll go to 40 and set another key exactly where it's at.
So 40 then?
Mm-hmm. And also 60.
40.
So 1, 20, 40, and 60 should all have the ball at 0 with a keyframe.
Well, I don't know, my thing just disappeared.
Okay, so why would I just go to 1, 20, 40, 60 and set a keyframe and not do anything?
Oh, that's for when the ball will go back down and stuff like that.
Exactly. That's when the ball's going to hit the ground, okay? So it's much easier just to jump to those frames where we know the ball's going to be on the ground and just set it on the ground, okay? Instead of having to go 1 here, 10 here, 20 here, and just constantly having to move the ball back and forth. It's much easier to do that, okay? So now we'll go in the middle to 10, and we'll scoot the ball up however many units you want to scoot it up.
10? Like, you mean we can put it up in the air?
Yeah, make sure you change your frame first to 10, and then move the ball up in the air. I'm moving mine to 6.655. I don't care what you set yours to.
Okay.
Everything.
Nope.
Okay. All right, so now we're at 10. We want to do that same trick. So I want to be able to click on 30, click on 50, and set a keyframe for it right here. But if I click on 30, what happens?
It goes back down?
It goes back down, okay? So we're going to click on 10. And there's multiple ways to do this. And now I'm going to middle mouse button. I'm going to use a scroll wheel and click on 30. Okay? So use the scroll wheel and click on 30 instead of the left mouse button, and you'll see that the ball stays floating in the air. Middle mouse button does not update your viewer. So it's a great thing to be able to say, okay, I just want to jump to this frame and set a key wherever it is. Yep, so set another key there.
And then up to 50 again?
And then up to 50 again, yep. Make sure you use the middle mouse. Okay, now we've also haven't tapered any of this stuff. Right now we're just kind of going in there and blocking out our keys. That's all we're doing. There's some people who, like I've said, I think on the last one, they'll literally go in there, they'll create a sphere, and they'll go through the graph editor and just graph out everything they're doing just by inserting the keyframes there, and only jump in here to preview what they've done. Okay, so they don't even do what we're doing, but that's at a different level. All right, so now if we hit play, we get the ball bouncing. Okay.
Awesome.
Now it's not bouncing with any excitement. It's very boring. There's a lot of stuff wrong with this thing that we're gonna fix.
Kind of like an elevator.
It is. All right, so let's stop it and rewind it. Now, where's the first spot that we should go to kind of fix the stuff? The graph editor, right. So let's go to the graph editor.
But everyone has different graph editing stuff. Oh, I get it. We're going to make it look like a rhythmic music.
Well, it doesn't matter what the graph, what your values are, what mine are. The graphs should look pretty similar. Okay? So in my graph editor, what's happening in here is that we have a slow start, even though it's still pretty quick. It's slow. It picks up some speed. It slows down. It goes down. It slows down before it hits the ground. It slows down. Every single keyframe, it's slowing down. Okay? So what should we do to these?
Make the ones on the ground sharper.
Correct. Okay? So the ones on the ground, we need to be sharp. The ones on the top do not need to be sharp. Okay? Because the ones on the top are being affected by gravity. The ones on the top are basically gravity's pulling it down, so it's going to slow down. And then it's going to pick up speed. So well, I'm just selecting them to highlight them. Okay? So these ones we're going to leave alone for now. The bottom ones we're going to marquee, and we're going to click on linear, which is this straight line right in the middle-ish.
Linear?
Yes, linear.
So we press the button then?
Okay. Now linear should make all of these perfectly flat. Okay. There should be no deceleration as the ball comes down. The ball doesn't know that gravity is, know that the ground is there, so it's not going to slow down. Okay, that doesn't make sense. So what we should have now, if we just move our graph editor off to the other screen, and we hit play, is that although it's not perfect yet, it's getting better, where now it actually looks like the ball is hitting something and coming back up. Okay, it looks like we have that little bit of acceleration. Yes, ma'am?
So what did that do when we put
It just speeds up this bottom area. Okay?
So it makes it definitely look more like a bouncing ball.
It makes it look like it's hitting something, even though obviously it's not hitting something. There's nothing there for it to hit. Okay? Everyone's good so far?
Yeah.
All right. So let's stop that and bring our graph editor back. Okay, now the next thing we can do, there's several things we can do, and it's all going to depend on your own workflow. The first thing that's kind of bothering me is I want it to kind of jump up quicker and stay up there a little bit longer. All right? So what I want to do on these guys here is I want to make them a little bit more like stretched out. Okay? I want to make sure that these things are just a little bit wider. This is too narrow for me. That's too narrow. So we want to pull it out. I can't, inside Maya by default, grab these handlebars and pull them out. Okay? It doesn't work like that. So what I have to do is I'm going to marquee all three top ones. And I'm going to go to Curves, Weighted Tangent.
Whoa, what are we doing?
Highlight the top ones.
Okay.
And go to Curves, Weighted Tangents.
Wait.
Yep, all the way on the bottom.
All the way to the bottom.
Okay.
And then under Tangents, Free Tangent Weight, also all the way on the bottom.
So we press weight and tangents, and then we press tangents, and then free weighted tangent.
Yep, Free Tangent Weight. Okay? So what that does is it makes our handlebars hollow. Do you see now they have a little hollow opening in them? So now I can grab the handlebar, hold Shift, and middle drag to scale it to stretch it out.
Okay, so we hold shift and select it.
We select the handlebar first, any one of the handlebars on the top, hold Shift, and then middle mouse button, drag it out.
So how far do you want us to drag it out?
Just a little bit. Just to kind of make the hills on top a little bit more rounded. Okay, if you look at mine and you look at yours, you can kind of compare what they look like.
Is there a way to do all
Does
three
that
at
look
the
good?
same time?
No.
I'm having
Or maybe no. Yes, there is. If you highlight them all, there you go. So you grab one, shift click the next, and then move them around. Okay.
Looks good. Let me see how it looks now.
Okay. So yes, let's look and see how it looks.
I need some assistance.
All right. So now if we look at this, we definitely have a lot more of this like quick motion where it jumps up quick, hangs more, it bounces down quicker, and bounces back up. So we definitely get more of a feel, more of a animated, cartoony look to this, just based on a couple movements. We've set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keyframes, 7 keyframes, 7 keyframes. We've adjusted some tangents. That's all we've done. Okay. So now let's stop it again.
Did you make your
Yes, I did. I hit Alt B. Oops. There we go. So now we can go back in here, and I want to do something else. As we tweaked these guys up here, if you look at the curve, you can see that it comes down and it's slight. I mean, we're not even really seeing it, but I want you to be able to see it. Is that this graph is actually kind of like dipping down and then rounding out a little bit. It's subtle, okay? So it's kind of dipping down and then rounding off here. So I want to get rid of that. Now I can't go here and make this any more linear because it's already linear, okay? So I still want to come down here and tweak these guys. I can't just tweak them though. I can't just grab this and middle mouse button because you see how it moves both of them at the same time. So I need to do what we would do in Illustrator, what we do in Photoshop or InDesign with the pen tool, is I need to break the tangents, right? I need to split them, okay? So we're gonna marquee the bottom ones. And then up top, there is a little thing that's like red and yellow. It's probably also under tangents.
Wait, does it just have a lock on it or something?
No. If you go to tangents, it's break tangents, or if you go right here, there's the little wavy things and then this thing next to it.
So do we just select all of them?
Yep, just the bottom ones though, not the top ones.
And then tangent says it's break tangent, is that right?
Yep, and that breaks the tangent. That separates those two handlebars so we can manipulate them individually. Okay, so then we can come in here and just kind of pull these a little bit closer together and get rid of that. You don't have to hold shift for this one. Okay, so I'm just grabbing these and just pulling them in.
We pull them in like together in?
Yep, closer together. Okay, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking that handle and I'm lining the handle up to the curve. By lining the handle up to the curve, that makes it linear.
Haha.
Okay.
Ooh.
Now it's very important that as we play with these things, we only break the tangents we want to break. I never ever ever want to break the top handles because those guys should be smooth. If I break the top handles, what could happen is I could have like a little flicker or something in there where I don't want because I want it to be smooth at the top. Okay? So then we can move this over again and hit the play button and then again see how it's looking. Now the last change was a subtle change. We're probably not going to see a huge difference from the last bouncing ball to this bouncing ball. All right, but it is there.
It looks really good.
Mm-hmm. And part of this is going to be kind of being a little bit OCD about, you know, getting your stuff to feel the way it should feel. There's a lot of little tweaking things that we can do to it. All right. So the next thing we can do is we need to change the height of this because right now it's steady. It's just boom, 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 boom. So now we need to change the height. So now we're going to go to, let's say, this guy here. So marquee the first hill and look at your value for the first hill. So your value is the right box. There's a value, it says 10, and then mine says 6.655.
Mine says 5.
Okay, that's fine. So whatever number is in this area, that's how big that first hill is. So then when we marquee the second hill, we can just type in a value that's somewhere around, you know, 60% or so.
Oh, so you want us to put the other one lower? How do you do
Yes,
that?
you can just type it in. So mine was 6.5, I made my next one 4.
So
Okay.
if mine was 5, then I would make mine 3?
Sure, 3 would work. And then grab your last hill and shrink that one down below the first one.
Aha! Oh, okay, so
Okay,
one will be
so now we should have a big hill, medium hill, and a small hill.
ta-da!
And then once you're done, just hit the play button and take a look at it.
Here.
Okay, now we've taken our pretty little bouncing ball and we've kind of ruined it because we've adjusted the height of the hill, but we never adjusted the time it takes to get there. Okay, so this is like a basic thing. If it takes me 5 seconds to go up the hill and 5 seconds to go down, then if I'm going up a smaller hill, it should take me less time, right? So that's what we're doing here is he's gone up the first hill and it's taken him 20 frames. So our first one is at 1, our second one is at 20. So the next hill should not take another 20 frames to go up. Okay? So we need to move those.
So we need to move them again?
Yes. So we're gonna shrink these points. So I'm just gonna marquee. Now watch how I marquee these. I'm not gonna just marquee this point and scoot it over, and then this point and scoot it over, then this point and scoot it over. I'm gonna marquee everything after my first hill. So everything over here, I'm marqueing, and then I hold shift to constrain it to straight, and then scoot it over some.
Shift, okay. Shift. Mr. Sean.
1 second.
Come on, you stupid move.
Okay.
What are you hooking onto to move it over?
Just holding shift and middle mouse button dragging while in the move tool.
Oh. So now we have to try to straighten everything out, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'll do the top one. Whoa. So do we make the final one, like the tiny end of it, really small?
Yes, you have to make that one really small. And you may even have to take your bottom handles, like if you look at mine here, this last hill, I can't get rid of this bump in there. There's a tiny little bump right there. And me playing with these handlebars is not getting rid of it, okay?
How did you get the bump?
How did I get it?
Yeah.
Because I've just kind of squished my stuff and expanded my points. Basically, I'm moving this not far enough. If I pulled it up, there, the bump's gone, okay? But because I pulled it down so far, it's kind of squished because of this
So
handlebar.
really need to pull it that far down?
Okay, you don't need to, no. But in this case, let's say I wanted it at this height. What I have to do is make my tangent weights free on that handlebar so that I could grab it and pull it down, okay? Just like we did with the top ones. We make them free tangent weights, and then we can pull them down.
How'd you get so skinny?
I only fed it non-carb foods.
Oh.
All right, and then once you're done, play it again and take a look at it. See if you're liking the way that the ball is bouncing. See if it looks natural. See if it looks like there is some gravity there that's just kind of weighing it down.
Looks good.
Now the amount of bounce between them, of how high it's going to go each time, is going to be dictated by the kind of object that it is. One of those super bounce balls, it might go like, let's say, 10 feet in the air, then 9 feet in the air, then 8 feet in the air, then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A bowling ball might go, you know, the first time it goes up to 10, then the second time it goes up to 2, and then the second time it goes like a half a centimeter, okay? So depending on what kind of ball that you have there, is going to dictate, you know, the bounciness of the object and how long it's going to bounce for, okay? Now I like to add in one more little touch to this, which is I like to have these keyframes, the ones on top, just nudged back a little bit, okay? And what that does, I literally take it and move it back 1 frame. I moved all the top keyframes, or all the top keyframes, yeah, back 1 frame.
Wait, what'd you do now?
I just moved the top keyframe back 1 frame. So instead of this one being at 10, it's now at 9.
Okay.
Instead of this being at 26, it's at 25.
Just move it up and down.
All right, so now we have the ball and it's just bouncing and it's pretty good. So all the work we've done so far has been just on the Y direction, just on it moving up and down, okay? So now what we can do is let's get the ball to rotate, okay? So he's gonna flip over.
So we have to press the rotate tool then?
Yep, so now we're gonna go to rotate. Now it's important which direction rotate are we gonna do.
Are we gonna do this on a different axis or something? Or
What do you mean?
like, are we gonna do it on the X or the Z?
That was the question. So which direction should we go?
Left. No, right.
Well, which is left and which is right? If I go here, this is
This
left.
way. I mean, X is on X.
We're gonna go in the Z direction,
Or we're gonna go to the Z direction.
okay? No, there's no left and right in here. It's only X, Y, or Z, all right? So we're gonna go to rotate Z. We go back to frame 1,
Okay. Ow.
and then we right click and we set a key, or we hit S to set a key.
Deselected?
Yep. Okay, so set a key on rotate Z. Okay, and then we're going to go to our last keyframe, whatever it happens to be. Mine's 41, yours might be 48, yours might be 52. Whatever your last keyframe is, wherever that last red tick is, and then just rotate it in the Z direction a couple times.
Wait, so it's still rotated in the Z direction a few times?
Yep, just rotate it around. I rotated mine negative 1094.79. All right, so now we have the ball rolling. And now, obviously, it doesn't really match what's going on inside here. Okay? Now, the other thing we have to be concerned about is how fast it's spinning. If you've ever seen a car drive down the street where it looks like its hubcaps or its wheels are actually spinning backwards. Okay? If we rotated this, let's say we grabbed, let me grab this thing here. A cylinder. Perfect.
Do we have to make a cylinder?
Nope, I'm just showing something.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I'm going to take my divisions down. 6. All right. Yep. So I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to just set a couple rotate keyframes.
Demonstrating it for fun?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so right there we can see exactly how this thing is rotating. But let's say for whatever reason, instead of me putting this to 360, I put it to 3600. You can see what looks like is happening here. It looks like it's spinning one way, then spinning another way, then spinning another way. Okay? Imagine this. If I were to take this and rotate it, let's see, 60 times 60. 3600. Unless it's not. Hold on, let me see. I want to get this exact so you get the illusion. That is 60. Oh, never mind. 60 times 59. $35.40. There we go. No, it's still not right. Oh, never mind. Yep. I'm going to set that and go here. There we go. All right. So now this thing is rotating 3,540 degrees over 60 frames. It doesn't look like it's rotating at all. Okay? What's happening with this is it's rotating from this position to basically that position to that position every single frame. Okay? So it's rotating so much that we can't see the rotation. Right, because we have that. So yes, we'd want motion blur on something like this. So if I go, just to show you, if I go to viewport and I turn on motion blur here and I close it and then I turn this on.
I mean, that thing was actually spinning.
Yeah, it's actually spinning. It's spinning so fast though that we can't see it. Okay? It's moving from this position to that position to that position. So all of these things are literally just taking the place of the other one. Okay? So stuff like motion blur is what would help us be able to see that. So like a helicopter propeller spinning, there's no way you'd be able to see each blade moving. All right? So with motion blur on, we would definitely see something like that. So the same thing we have to kind of keep in mind as we're rotating this thing is that we can't rotate it so much that we lose the effect of it. That the ball's spinning so fast that it looks like it's spinning backwards or doing what it was doing originally, which is kind of like going one way, going the other way, going the other way.
Then why did it look like it was blur on both sides, like in both directions?
On here, let me see.
Yeah.
Let me turn it back on. Like this?
Yeah.
Because what's happening with this is that because the shutter is open right here for 0.2 of a unit, it's actually showing the blur going here. So we're not actually looking at this. Okay, I deselect it, it's easier to see. You can see the blur happening there. All right. And I could take this and make this longer, and I don't know why it's doing that funky thing. Yeah, this is not an accurate motion blur. I'm gonna take my samples up. Maybe that'll help. No, not really. Yeah, whatever. Yes, it is. Sometimes it kind of works, and it's a little gimmicky thing, but yeah, what's happening is it's just like a regular camera. The shutter opens, it catches that blurriness, the shutter closes, okay? And then we just see that over and over again. All right, so we just have to be careful with this, that we just don't go too crazy with it. And we also have to understand the physics behind how this thing would be rolling from keyframe to keyframe. We only set 2 keys on this, but if you look at our keyframes now, I'm just going to isolate this one, is that it's starting off very slow rotating, picking up speed in the middle, and then gradually getting slower. It would actually be a little bit different, right? What should this graph look like? Linear where?
On the zero day?
The whole thing?
No, just at the start.
Just at the start.
Oh, wait, what are we doing now?
Okay, so you're going to go in your graph editor, you're going to grab your rotate Z and set the first keyframe to just be linear.
Hey, F, come on. Rotate Z. What do we do with the rotate Z?
Just grabbing the first keyframe and clicking the linear button.
Oh, linear button?
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to curve it?
Yes, and then we're actually going to curve it maybe a little bit extra, okay? So I like to go to my curves, make it weighted.
Wait, so go to curves and it said weighted tangents?
Yep, and then go to tangents and say free the tangent weight. And that way we can kind of exaggerate this a little bit.
Is there a reason for weighted tangents without freeing the tangents?
No, I've never used it up without.
Do you have any suggestions?
Okay, now because we did that, we might see, hey, this thing is moving way too fast at the beginning. You might like the middle, but you may not like the end. So you may have to tweak it some, okay? You may have to say, I don't want it to move that far, so instead of negative 1,000, maybe I do negative 720 or something, or negative 540.
So wait, what did you do now? You just curved it more?
I just changed the value. Instead of it rotating 1,000, I didn't want it to rotate 1,000. So I just lowered it so it doesn't go all the way to negative 1,000 and cut. It's basically in half, negative 540. Happening, okay? Negative 540 is a much easier number to kind of type in and work with than negative 540.86532, okay? So I typed in negative 540 because that's what worked in mine. And the motion on this seems much more natural than the motion I had on the other one, okay? Now would 540.75 work? Yeah, it would. But negative 540 is a nice round number. It works perfectly. And it looks like it's a nice little roll that's on there. Okay? Now the other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show this, and then we'll get to the next part of it without doing it. Okay? If I'm doing my squashing, and I'm here, let's say I squash this thing. So
Where do you go to do that?
we're not squashing yet. We're just watching.
Oh.
Okay? So I squash it like this. You can see how we squashed perfectly here, lined up just like a little flying saucer. Wonderful. Okay, he's floating a little bit, but we'll fix that eventually. Okay, when I flip over and he hits the ground again, and then I go to do that same kind of squash, you can see now we're kind of tilted a little bit. Okay, he's at a little bit of an angle here, so that if I was to set him on the ground, it might look kind of weird because he's not perfectly flat on the ground. And if he was going to squash like that, he should kind of be squashed off to one side, and, you know, and whatever. So typically what I like to do is every time he would go from one hill to the other hill, I like to make sure he's rotated 180 degrees. Okay? So in this case, from him going here to here, I would rotate him 180 degrees. Okay? Now, why not 360? I'm going to show you why not 360. So I'm going to set a key right there. You're not doing this part, just I am. Okay? Now that works. It looks good. It flips over. Wonderful. Okay? So now let me add the squash in. So I'm just going to add this squash like that. Key here. I'm going to go up a frame and then add my stretch. Okay, and then I'm going to go here at the end. I'm going to keep the stretch there, go up to 20, and I'm going to add my squash again. So it's leave it there for now. All right. So now here we are at the beginning. He rotates, and over here he's back to rotated, and he's squashed. But now watch what happens in the middle. And then he kind of turns into this like little football shape, and then squashes down. Okay. Now the little football shape that we're getting is actually like the momentum. Okay. He hits the ground and squashes, and then he's being propelled up. Okay. His momentum, his kind of moving in the same direction, is kind of stretching him out to go in that direction and to be that football shape. So as he's kind of spinning around in this 360, it doesn't really make sense that he would stay that football shape, okay, because he's kind of rotating out like that. So I would typically do 180. Where's my graph? There it is. Because negative 180, you'll see what kind of graph we get with this one. Let me free this. Back there, good. Okay. So with 180, you see that we turn into the football. He comes up perfect, and then it comes right back down. Okay? So it makes a little bit more sense for it to do this kind of motion here. Okay? And even at the top of this, I would actually want to have him back to being normal. Okay? So here he is, pancake, stretchy out, becomes normal, and then flattens down. Okay? So we're kind of introducing the physics of this ball is being propelled up, so he starts to stretch. He gets to the top where he's at rest and everything's just kind of settling. And then as he starts falling back towards Earth, he's going to start stretching out again because wind is blowing this ball and kind of stretching it out further. And then he becomes a pancake the second he hits the ground. Okay? So let me just undo. I can just delete this. Delete that. And I'm going to delete my keyframe just to get back to where you guys are, because we'll get to this again in a second. Oops. And then reset that to 1. All right. So now this is where you guys are still at, is at this point. Okay. So now we want to move the ball along the x-axis. Okay?
Wait, so we're not doing it across the...
Or sorry, yeah, the x-axis. In my case, it's the x. Yours might be the z, whatever. Okay? So I'm just going to set a key on my x at frame 1.
Key selected, right?
Yep. Then we're going to, translate x. And then we're going to go to the end, move it up an arbitrary amount.
Which goes on the left, right?
There is no left, remember?
Okay, right there.
And then we're going to key that again.
Wait, so did you have to move it out like that?
Yes.
Wait, what?
So we set a key for this at 1, where it's here.
Okay.
Right at the origin, we set a key right on translate x. Then we went up to the end of our keyframes. And we set another key at 41 with it pulled out here.
Can someone help me, please?
Yep, I'll be over there in a second. Okay, then again, we need to look at just those attributes of what is that x doing. Like in John's, his x is moving very slow at the beginning, and mine's kind of doing that and then kind of taking off. So if you see, it's like right here, it's really slow, and then it just kind of shoots across the screen. Okay? And then again, it's probably slowing down over here as well. So, you know, the x is no different than any other curve that we're going to deal with, is that we have to go through this, try to figure out what would actually be happening with the x direction, and then apply that to the graph. Okay? And the biggest thing that people, get confused with the graph is that when we see a line that's more parallel like this, or more horizontal like this, that means it's going to go slow. When we see a line that's more vertical, that means it's going to go fast. Okay? That's just, if you remember those two things, you'll be in better shape than not remembering them. Okay? So right at the beginning, we have a line that's basically flat. I mean, if you look at how much change is here compared to, between this line and this line, there's a huge amount of change than here. Okay? So we want to take this first one, and just like we did with the rotate z, just kind of pull it up like this. Okay? Just so that translate x is starting quick and then slowing down. Because at the beginning, we have a lot of momentum. And I may have a little bit too much momentum on mine. Look at it launching across the screen. All right, so nothing is going to be immune to us adding keyframes and then having to go into the graph editor and tweak those keyframes and adjust them and get them to look the way we want them to look.
Why am I 52 now?
What? 'Cause I just ended up on 52.
Oh.
Okay.
Ah.
So we can tweak this thing for, a while just to kind of get it to look the exact way we want. Sometimes we're going to run into the issue of just kind of like working out little quirks. Like right now, I'm not really satisfied with the way that the ball is coming to rest at the end. It looks like it's like bouncing in place. Okay. So what that means is that on my translate X curve here, I've gone just a little bit too flat. There's not enough movement here in the X. So I need to just adjust this some more and just kind of pull it down a little bit here. Maybe pull this down a little bit there. Okay. And this is going to be not just for my specific scene or this specific scene. For any project you're working on, you have to be able to kind of go through and pick out, where is this problem happening? Is it in the translate Y? Is it in the translate X? Is it in the rotate Z? Okay. Notice how we've only set keyframes on 3 things: the translate X, translate Y, and rotate Z. We haven't set keyframes for everything along the way. The first day of class when we were working on stuff, I made sure that we weren't going through. Let me create a dummy object here. And we weren't doing this. Let me just reset him to that and freeze transform. Okay, that we weren't doing this. Going to frame 1, hitting
Another ball?
no.
Oh.
Hitting S to set a key, going up to 10, 20, 40, 60, setting a key, then going up to 10 here, scooting this up. Okay, and then doing this, getting this ball to work, and then when we go in the graph editor, look at the mess that's in here. Look at all these extra keyframes that we've set and all this other stuff that's going on. Okay, you never, ever, ever want to just hit S to set a keyframe on an object like this. Okay, you want to keep your animations as simple as possible and as focused as possible into what it is you're animating. So that's why we broke this ball into, not this ball, sorry, that one, into the exact things. And we focused, just like we did in the stick one. We didn't animate all the sticks at the same time. We focused on the bottom and worked our way up. In this case, we worked on the translate Y because it's easier, translate Y first, because it's easier to get that bouncing first. Make sure the bouncing looks good while it's in position. And then animate it rotating. And then animating it moving along the X direction. And then animating it squashing and stretching. Okay? So now that we have this doing what we're doing here, wonderful, we're going to save this one. Okay.
Is it okay if I saved it as bouncing ball practice?
Yep. If you haven't set your project, set your project. So File, Set Project. Oops, sorry, we didn't even create a project for this one. Go to File, Project window. And we'll make a new project called Bouncing Ball.
So, hey, how do we make another project?
Go to File, Project window.
Project? Wait, project? Where?
File.
File.
Okay.
And what?
You click on this new button up here.
Oh, that one?
Yep. And then you give it a name and make sure it goes into your work folder.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And then we just hit accept.
So, bouncing ball.
And then save it.
Should we put down our names and stuff so it doesn't get confusing?
Yep, you can do that too.
Because I know we're going to have to turn these in eventually.
Yes, ma'am. The other thing that we can look at is if we are experiencing issues and we're trying to figure out where is this problem happening. We can use what's called muting, okay? Where I can say, you know what, something about the way the ball is bouncing up and down just doesn't look right. I really need it to be, to focus just on the translate Y, but I have these other keyframes that I need to get rid of, okay? We can right click on those keyframes and tell Maya to mute them. And what that means is it's not going to display those. It's just going to keep them exactly where they're at. And as I hit play, I can focus on just that translate Y now. The other keyframes are still there. They're still functioning. They're just hidden right now. They're just muted. And then I could say, okay, well, that looks pretty good. Maybe it was in the rotate. So let me unmute that. And let me go to these two, and I can mute those. And I can look at just what the rotate's doing and just kind of focus in and say, okay, what's the rotate doing at this point? Where do I need to adjust some things? And some things just aren't going to make sense by themselves, but we can show everything. Mute this one. So I'm muting just the one so I can see the other two. Okay. So I can really isolate this thing to get it to look the way I need it to look. The other thing that I can do, if you grab your sphere and you go to Animate, go to Ghost Selected. And then we can hit Ghost. And now what we can see is a ghosting of where the ball's moving. And this can really help you kind of isolate, where is a trouble issue? Where is something happening that we don't want it to? How is the ball moving at certain frames?
It looks like a jumping worm.
It does. And we can customize what this looks like. If I go to my Ghost Selected, I can say custom frames, not custom frames, custom frame steps. And I can say I want 30, I can't do 30 apparently, 10 and 10, and a step size of 3. Okay, so now what I'm looking at is 10 frames up and 10 frames back. Actually 30 frames up and 30 frames back. Okay, so now I can really get an idea of where this ball is moving. And that will sometimes help you too to kind of isolate certain areas and kind of look at this and say, how much lag time do I have here? What is the arc looking like here compared to some of these other ones? Sometimes just because of the movement, you might get a sharper peak, okay? If the ball doesn't move in the X fast enough, you'll get more of a peak. If it moves a lot, you'll get more of a stretched out area, okay? So if I grab, and this is live, so I can go in here and say translate X, make this a lot bigger, and then you can see what's going to happen. Okay, so then we can just pull this back down, and I can get this in the look of exactly what I want it to look like as I'm playing with it out here. All right, so it gives you a lot of abilities. There's a lot of different tools here that we can play with. I'll just unghost.
What's that under?
Animate. Yep, and I'll unghost that, and that's it. Okay. Okay. So now what I want you to do for the rest of today is I want you to start over from scratch and recreate the animation for the bouncing ball. Okay, so we're doing the 2 seconds of rolling, the 3 bounces plus some. Okay, you're not going to be able to just do 3 bounces and that's it. If you watch this animation, you can see boom, boom, boom. It stops. Okay, it shouldn't just stop all of a sudden. We should get a couple of tricklers that will happen after the fact. Okay. So there's even a couple tools inside of the graph editor that allow us to kind of play with this. So if I go to my translate Y, and this guy wants to come back a little bit, there we go, and I go to my insert keyframe right there, I can highlight this and I can just middle mouse button click some points in here. And then I could say, okay, I'm going to add a little hill here, I'm going to add a little hill here. Or I can do it out there inside the viewport. All right, and then again, I'm going to go through and do those same things that we did before. Linear on the bottom.
How did you add those right in the editor?
Just using this insert key. You just click on it, then use the middle mouse button to add the points.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see how I'm just doing like we did before, just gradating downward. Okay, so now it looks like it's coming more to a rest. It looks like it's more natural, just kind of like stopping because of gravity and stopping because of things affecting it, not because of some supernatural force called Maya. Let's get that guy in, make that linear. Okay, now you may have to add more frames. I'm at 60 here. If I'm going to do 2 seconds of animation at the beginning, 3 bounces plus some, and then 2 seconds of animation at the end, what's the very minimum amount of frames that we know I'm going to need? Where'd you get 100? Just a random number.
Double?
120 is just a
120 at least, right? Because we have 2 seconds at 30 frames a second, 2 seconds at 30 frames a second, so that's 120 frames, and then whatever is going to happen in the middle. So we know we're going to need at least 120 frames here, okay? So, well, yeah, without the rolls, right? So I'm saying the bare minimum as far as what we know is 120. We don't know how long the bounces are going to happen. So if we just estimated 200 here, that should be plenty of room. Now, even though I have the bounce set up at the beginning, remember, we have the dope sheet, we have the graph editor, we have a bunch of tools that we can just say, okay, we know where this is at, we like where it's at, we just want to move it down to 60. So I can go to the dope sheet, which I don't have on my shelf right now. Here's all my keyframes, and I can just marquee them, middle drag them down to 60, and there they are, okay? So right now, there's nothing happening until 60, and then it bounces across. So I could very easily go to 0, or 1, and grab my translate X, pull it back some.
What are you doing now, Mr. Sean?
I'm showing the assignment part. And then setting a key on it.
Do we change the name of the ball practicing ball we've been doing?
Nope, you're going to start a brand new one.
I'm busy helping that.
There's
All right.
a video on YouTube.
All right, and then we're also going to take this and, oops. And I don't want this to be just like, you know, this kind of funky curve, because there's no reason to have a funky curve there. What should happen is the ball should go from the end to the start without any real interruptions, okay? If I'm looking at my translate X, this thing should just go like that, okay? A little bit quicker at the beginning and then kind of slow down at the end. So this middle keyframe I really don't need, but I'm going to use it as reference for where this guy should be, okay? Because if he moves 10 units-ish, 11 units, 12 units, then this one should probably be about here. And then I can probably delete that and then go from there, okay? And then, of course, we want to look at it and see. So there's our rolling, and there's our bouncing, okay? So then we'll also add the rotation here a little bit more. We'll probably add a little bit more rotation there. And if you look, we have this little funky spot here. Oops. So I need to break that.
The ball bounces up.
Right, that's where it would be bouncing up. There we go.
It's a catapult.
Right, it would be a catapult there. And then you eventually will decide how you want the ball to bounce up or why it's bouncing up. When we get to it, we're actually going to, I'll show a couple of different ways, but in mine, I'm going to have him kind of squash down like he's preparing. He's kind of rolling, building up momentum. He squashes, and then he bounces up and does his stuff, okay? But you could have like a little button there. People have done like a little button where as he gets to this button, it just kind of like launches him up in the air, okay? So you could do that as well. But just keep in mind the parameters, 2 seconds, 3 or so bounces, and then that. And then at the end here, okay, well I don't want him to just stop. I want another 2 seconds of rotating. So I take whatever my last frame is, 115, and I add 60 to it, so that'd be 175. And I just move this along. Set another key, go in my graph editor, and delete that keyframe out. Okay? And then add some rotations in there as well. Now I could also just borrow my rotation keyframe and just say, move this down.
Project won't need a folder for the bouncing ball when we start the new work.
You're going to just use the same one.
Okay.
There we go. And make sure it comes to a rest. There you go. So they did slide a little bit at the end. And it did slide a little bit at the beginning. You can definitely see that sliding right there. So that's where I have to come in here and kind of play with these and say, okay, well maybe my translate X should be a little bit flatter at the beginning to kind of ramp up to it. Okay, he's not just starting, he's building up his speed. So maybe at the very beginning I'll have him ramp up. And same thing here, he ramps up. And then maybe over here, soften that a little bit. So that looks much nicer. Still a little bit of sliding happening. We can fix that.
Are there directions on how you want us to do this?
Yep. That's what I'm doing right now.
Oh, scrap.
Okay, and then maybe a little bit too much rotation at the end still, so let me just flatten that again and see. Oops. And sometimes it is going to be just back and forth, just kind of playing with this setting, playing with that setting, until you get something that's going to be appealing. There we go. That I think the end works pretty good and the beginning works pretty good. Okay, now we haven't added any of the squashing and stretching in this. I want you to get this far first, and then we'll go through and add the squashing and stretching, okay? That's always going to be a last thing that we do because it's so kind of like added on to all the other stuff. It's kind of like secondary to whatever else we're doing, all right?